So as you can guess, this is not going to be like my usual type of video. If you want those Call of Duty kind of montages or whatever, you can go somewhere else for today. That's going to be coming up eventually again. But for now, I'm doing something that I've always wanted to do, I just never actually did. I want to try predict the Premier League table for the first time really ever. I have obviously had thoughts about this, I've just never actually sat down and thought about how the table might finish at the start of the season. I've waited now until the transfer window's been over, in the Prem at least, and the first game of the season has been done, just so I could get a small bit of a look at how the teams are. Obviously, one game, and especially the first game of the season, doesn't really give too much detail as to how each team is going to perform, especially on a weekly basis, but I still wanted to have that little touch of information just to fall back on pretty much. So obviously, for those who are interested in football, you all have your own opinions. You're going to know that some of mine are going to be controversial. I know some of mine are controversial. They're controversial to myself. I'm torn between a few places, but to me personally, I think at the minute I've got it pretty stable to a point where I think it could actually end this way. So where I'm going to start is bang in the middle. I'm going to go from 10th through 20th and then from 9th to 1st. So in 10th position I'm going to go for Burnley. Obviously, like I just said, watching one game doesn't give much information as to how the season will progress with that one individual team. But in that Burnley-Southampton game, I did think they seemed a lot more connected as a squad. They've had a pre-season this year. Last season they had the Europa League playoffs, which probably hindered them a small bit. I know they didn't have Europa League then throughout the rest of the season, but they definitely didn't have a pre-season to settle. And from what I remember as at the start of last season, it wasn't great for Burnley. With that being said, I do think this year Sam Vokes is going to do a lot better, especially with another year behind him with Woods beside him. I think they're going to grow together as a squad, especially with them two up front. They've lost Tom Heaton, which is massive. I don't know if Nick Pope is actually up to the challenge of keeping Burnley afloat. If he is, then hopefully he can replace Tom Heaton and keep them where I think they're going to stay, in the middle of the table. I do think Burnley can actually stay up there this season. In 11th place I have Bournemouth. They looked good as usual, but when they're playing against Sheffield, They did struggle in the first half. Billy Sharp got Sheffield's goal, and then Bournemouth just kind of came back from then on. From what I watched of it, I only got the highlights of a few games of Match of the Day, this game being one of them. From what I could tell, they took a while to grow into the game. The likes of King, Wilson, Brooks and Ake especially, having all that money labelled on them, need to have a good season this year if Bournemouth want to stay up. Especially for Eddie Howe. I love Eddie Howe as a manager. I think he's very good at man managing especially, and I do think he can get the best out of his players that he has at his disposal. The likes of Dominic Solanke, I think he will get the best out of the season if he plays them a bit more. People have given Ake a 75 million of a price tag this transfer window that priced Leicester out of buying him, I think it was. And with that price tag above your head, even if you don't, go for that price, if you're valued at that, you're expected to, do well. And for a club like Bournemouth, he should be stepping up and being that main man in the defence. In 12th I have Watford. I just don't think they're with it at the minute. They take a while to kind of grow into the Premier League season. Maybe 2 more games and they'll be as right as rain. Who knows, but at the minute I've got them below Bournemouth and Burnley. I don't think they're going to stride to as well as they did last year. Obviously they could easily go against the grain of what I'm thinking and end up doing well with the likes of Sarr that they got in. I think he's a very good player. I don't know how Watford got him of all clubs. I think the likes of Leicester, if they didn't get Tielemans, they could have got Sarr. He's one of those players that I thought was going to go to a middle top club, not Watford. I don't know how or why he went to Watford, but regardless of that, I think he's a very good player. He could strengthen that squad. Getting in Craig Dawson from West Brom is a weird one. I know he's got the experience, but I don't think he's got the prowess, is that the word, to strengthen that team in any way, shape or form, personally. But to me, yeah, I see them in 12th. I don't see them doing too well this season, but I'm going to leave it at that. In 13th I have West Ham. People think they're going to do well this season. I really don't think so. Losing Arnautovic is a big deal regardless of what you think. Yeah, he wasn't playing too much last year, but he did get them vital goals, and even just him being a figure at the club is going to change a lot. The likes of Andy Carroll are gone. They're getting rid of the deadwood, which is good. And Haller, from what I saw in that City game, he was literally going from the striker position to defensive mid and winning the ball back and wanting to, you know, get the game going again from the West Ham midfield. And what that midfield lacked for me in Wilshere and Rice was just movement. Wilshere was terrible on the ball. Declan Rice just didn't seem to be with it at all from what I saw. I actually watched this game. Declan and Wilshere just seemed to be completely off the pace. Felipe Anderson wasn't that great, and Lanzini is great to see back at West Ham. They hardly had him at all last year. He was injured for most of it, same as Yarmolenko. Those two were back. They could be key figures that could probably persuade me to put them up ahead of Watford in this table, but I'm going to keep it the way it is, just because I think this is actually how it's going to end. In 14th then I have Brighton. Like I said in their game against Watford seemed off the pace, but that I can't take anything from Brighton. They looked very good as a team. They looked way more solid as a team than they did last year. And that's something to say when you're talking about a team like Watford who played as well as they did last year. To get as far as they did in the FA Cup last year was a massive achievement. I do think that should be applauded, and hopefully they'll do well again this year. But again, we're talking about Brighton now. They got in Aaron Moy, who could stable up the midfield a bit more. I think he's a very good player on the ball. And Neil Maupay from Brentford. Yeah, he's coming from a lower club, but he looked very rapid and he looked very clinical with that goal that he scored. I think he could be a very good player for Brighton. Murray could be the plan B. I think Murray's a great finisher when he's in the right positions. But for the most part, I think they're going to stick with Maupay up front and just use his pace. I think Brighton could actually do pretty well this year. Obviously, with my positioning with them in the table, I don't think they're going to do that well, but I think they're going to do better than they did last year, as in just how they play and just scoring more pretty much. They just need to score more than what they did last year, and I think they'll be okay. So in 15th, I have Southampton. I think they're going to struggle this year. Danny Ings doesn't seem to be that player that he used to be anymore. I used to love him when he was at Burnley. I actually wanted him to go to United when he was rumoured that he was going to leave. The likes of Che Adams, I don't know much about him. I've heard he's a good finisher and I heard he's just a good player in general. We've yet to figure that out. Losing Charlie Austin, a big figurehead in the club, a really good player in the club. I think that's a big loss for them. The likes of Steve Ward-Prowse need to step up like they did last year. Nathan Redmond started off that game yesterday very, very, very well. I do think he's a very good player. But these players need to step up for Southampton. They need leaders in that squad, and if they don't get them, they're not going to do well. It's as simple as that. So that's why I have them down so low. I don't expect them to get relegated anytime soon, but they just need to step that game up. They did well, very, very well towards the end of last season, and you have to respect them for that. They went from being pretty shit to fairly good and competing with that top middle of the table come the end of the season, and I think if they progress the way they are, they could definitely prove me wrong. And a lot of teams in this bottom half can. This is why I'm so controversial with myself, but I'm sticking to what I have. The only problem with Southampton is they still haven't fixed that defence since Virgil van Dijk left. Look how good he is for Liverpool. Imagine how good he was for Southampton. They still haven't replaced him. Not that I'm saying they can, it'll take a hell of a long time for them to replace him. But yeah, that's one really key point in that they're going to struggle in the defence. In 16th then I have Crystal Palace. They lost Wan-Bissaka. He's been very good for United so far on pre-season and that one game against Chelsea. I think Wilf wants to leave, so I don't think he will play as well as he wants to. I actually think he thinks personally he's outgrown Palace. He's one of those players, I'm going to go on a rant about Wilf now, haven't I? He's one of those players that I love to watch. I love Wilf as a player in general, but regardless of that, relying on Benteke and AU up front for Crystal Palace in general is not going to work. I don't think Benteke is a good enough striker anymore. Ayew is championship standard at best. Now, just staying up, I have Aston Villa, simply because I don't think personally Tyrone Mings is as good as people are saying, especially without Tuanzebe this year. I think they had a great partnership last year in the championship, the two of them together, the two young English lads, and without one of them, I think Tyrone Mings is going to struggle. Tom Heaton in goal will keep them afloat. If they end up staying in the Premier League this year, it's down to Tom Heaton, I will say. I think he is a great shot stopper, an unbelievable goalkeeper, especially for his age. Very experienced, and he will keep them up. The likes of Trezeguet up front looked very good. He looks very quick and very good in the counter-attack, very dangerous. And here's my controversial bit. Jack Grealish is overrated. I do not like Jack Grealish. I like him on the counter-attack and him getting rid of the ball from the defence. I personally just think he's overrated. And now my relegation zone, I'm just going to say straight out. 18th, Newcastle. I think they're going to go down this season. Steve Bruce doesn't scream confidence when you put him as a manager of a struggling team with fans who were kicking off of the owner for not putting in enough money to the club. Losing Iosi Perez is pretty big. Joelinton looks like a very good striker, good replacement for Rondon. And they got in Saint Maximin as well, who has been a very high profile player over the last year. Has shown a lot in his technical ability, very skillful player. Could be a good replacement for Iosi Perez. I don't know what he's like as in his goal scoring ratios, but again has been on the radar for a lot of clubs this summer, and I think he is a very good player. Don't think it's good enough to keep them up though. 19th I have Norwich, and 20th I have Sheffield, simply because I don't know enough about these clubs to rank them higher. I know more about the other clubs to have an idea of where they might place. Norwich is the club that has the most chance of proving me wrong, as they won the championship. I hope they do, because it would be good to see one of these three teams that actually got promoted to stay up and do well. And for Sheffield, I just know nothing about that club. That's why I've got them rock bottom. If you think differently, comment down below, but to me, from what I've heard anyway, their strike force is kind of old. I know of McGoldrick because he's an Irish striker. As from what I've watched of him watching Ireland, I don't like him as a striker. Ireland don't have any good strikers besides Shane Long really. And McGoldrick just, I don't think he's going to step up to the Prem. Simple as that. So in 9th place I've got Leicester. Simply because I don't think they've done as well as, let's say, Everton in the transfer window. Obviously Everton are above them in this list, so I'm just saying Everton. The likes of getting in Iosi Perez was a very good deal in my opinion. I just don't know if he or Maddison will play in that team. And there's Ashley Barnes as well, who could be in Perez's way. Getting in Yuri Tielemans is massive. I've been looking at him since he was at Anderlecht a few years ago, when he first came on the scene back in about 2015, 2016 I think it was, maybe even earlier. He's been on every big team's radar for a very long time now, and I think he's a very good asset to Leicester especially, but he would have been a great asset to any big club if they had got him from. If he went to AC Milan, let's say, he would have bossed it. If he went to Inter Milan, he would have bossed it. If he goes eventually to Bayern Munich, let's say, he could boss it in that midfield with Thiago. I do think, personally, I think he's a great player and one definitely for the future. But with that being said, I don't think they've got that personnel in their reserves or on their bench that would push them up the Premier League table. Ahead of the likes of Everton, who I'm going to say now I have 8th, just above Leicester. Getting in Alex Iwobi, who could pretty much be mentored by Walcott again. That could be great for his development, especially at a club that's more along his level than Arsenal. Gabaman looks like a really good signing, as well as Delph. You could swap them two in and out a bit. I think Gabaman's going to be their main defensive midfielder. I think Gabaman is going to replace Sneijderlin at Everton. Personally, I don't really rate Andre Gomez. I don't think he played very well last year to what people are saying he did. Maybe the Prem suits him a bit more than La Liga, but from what I watched of him when he was at Barcelona, obviously he didn't have a great season there, but he definitely wasn't as good for Barcelona as he was, let's say, for Portugal in their European Cup win. Above Everton in 7th, I'm putting Wolves, just simply because I think they deserve that place yet again. I don't think they're going to break the top 6. I really don't think they're going to break the top 6 this year. I think they're just going to get Europa League football and settle for that. Maybe next year they can, you know, since they've established themselves a bit more as a bigger club, they will get more signings next year. But I do think Wolves are a brilliant team. I think Raul Jimenez up at the top, if he has a good year, could have a very, very good year. Diogo Jota is becoming one of the best players in the Premier League creatively. Jan Moutinho has surprised me a hell of a lot. I thought he'd be way less mobile in that midfield. Neves is just becoming an unbelievable midfielder. I love to watch him. And even when they were playing United last year, those two matches that they bet us in, they were amazing. I can't even deny it. They were so much better than us. And they're just so clinical. Doherty on the right as well is just a beast of a player. I love watching Wolves, and I can't wait to see them progress even further and get even better. I have Chelsea in 6th just simply because I think this is a very experimental time for them. Granted, it is for United as well, but I think it's more so for Chelsea as they've lost their best playmaker in Eden Hazard. He's been there for years and has now left for pastures new, and probably greater pastures new in Real Madrid. Hopefully he does well over there. They don't have a pronounced striker. Tammy Abraham isn't really established. He is a very good striker by the looks. Will he cope with the Prem? And nobody knows yet. Batshuayi seems very off the pace. I know I've said that about a lot of players during this video, but he does seem off the pace, especially when he was playing for Palace last year. Didn't score that many goals, didn't really get as many chances as he probably would have liked. Yeah, that could be just from lack of service or lack of quality of service from the Crystal Palace players last year, but I think Tammy Abraham is going to get the nod from Frank Lampard ahead of Batshuayi and ahead of Hudson-Odoi. Personally, you never know, Chelsea could do well. They could smash the Champions League with a young team. They could really prove me wrong. Again, like I said, a lot of teams in this list could prove me wrong. Then in 5th, I'm going a bit biased with United and I'm putting Arsenal 5th. Yeah, they've really changed their team in the transfer window. Unai Emery is really just going in with making the team how he wants it and how he likes it, but their defence is still lacking. Getting rid of Koscielny, their leader, their captain, not just getting rid of him, but him leaving in general, is going to be huge, way bigger than what people are going to think. Socrates I don't think is going to last much longer. If he gets injured, David Luiz, can he step up for an Arsenal team that's really struggling for the last few years in defence? Why did he want out of Chelsea? There's so many questions I have to ask about that Arsenal team. Going forward, they look amazing. Aubameyang is an unbelievable striker. He's very, very good. With Pepe there, if Mkhitaryan actually comes out of this slump, he could be amazing. The midfield is free from Aaron Ramsey, which arguably could be a bad thing. I personally do think is a bad thing. I think he's a great creative player. So that means Tabalos, who looks, I haven't seen much of him, but I've heard is a very good ball player, could get more game time. Ozil probably will get more game time when he comes back with Kolasinac after that incident. And Kieran Tierney is definitely going to strengthen that left back position. I've watched him at Celtic. I think he's an unbelievable player. Should he take off at Arsenal, will move from Arsenal in about 2 years' time to a bigger club that he deserves to be at, because he is a young talent that is going to go far, same as Yuri Tielemans. I think those two are going to go very, very far. In 4th place, like I said, I'm being biased. United have got us in the top 4, but that's only if Pogba stays. There's a few weeks left in every other European window. If he leaves for Real Madrid, if he leaves for Juventus, we're going to struggle. McTominay is more of a box-to-box midfielder than Pereira is, but Pereira just has that instinct about him. I think Pereira is a very, very good player. I think he'll play a pivotal role alongside McTominay in this season. If Pogba goes, I don't know which one of them will replace him. It won't be Fred. I think Fred is definitely a defensive midfielder. I see Pereira being an attacking midfielder, just floating along that front line, just in behind the striker and assisting with the wingers and the wing backs. I think that's Pereira's role. McTominay is definitely more of the box-to-box. I think he'll play more often than Pereira will. That's if Pogba goes. I think we need Pogba. We need Rashford to have an unbelievable season. Martial needs to step up in that new number 9 shirt now that Lukaku's gone. He definitely deserves that number 9 shirt, and hopefully he'll be more prolific than he has been in the last few years. Obviously now he's getting the chance up front, so he has to take it. He really has to take it. Maguire in defence now I think is a great asset to have. Alongside Lindelof, I think those two could work very well together. It's such a shame Bailly had to get injured, so we actually had to buy Maguire. I think that really triggered the speed up of that transfer, is Bailly getting injured. I think that was key, because Bailly and Lindelof really remind me of Vidic and Ferdinand, even more so than any other defensive player in the Premier League. Bailly is that rash, hard tackler like Vidic was, and Lindelof is that more composed interceptor that Ferdinand was back in his day, and those two in 2008 were the duo partnership to compare any defensive partnership to. If De Gea is happy at United, I think he will play very well if he has his confidence back. Last year was a huge slump in his form, and it was shit to see. It was terrible to see him playing so badly. But we had Smalling ahead of him. Granted, Smalling has come on leaps and bounds in the last few years, but having Smalling and the Lindelof, who was up and coming, getting way better now alongside Maguire than what he will beside, or what he was doing beside Smalling. I'm very excited for this season at the minute. Just this young experimental team being fielded against Chelsea, let's say, and winning 4-0. Yeah, Chelsea, like I said again earlier on, are in their own experimental season, but it's a definite positive to take that Rashford can be so assertive in the attack even while playing on the wing. Pogba playing that beautiful pass into Rashford is what we need this year. We do not have that creativity. We do not have that creativity in any other player in our squad, I don't think. Or somebody who can do it as consistently and as someone who can do it with such little amount of effort as Paul Pogba can. He can just switch it on whenever he wants. And that's what we paid that much money for him for that reason. He's such an asset to have, and if we lost him, like I said before, I think we're going to go below even Chelsea. I think we're going to hit 6th, maybe even 7th. If Wolves keep rising the way they are and getting as good as they are, I think they could overtake us if we have a bad year, and that goes for any club within the top. And that goes for any club from 3rd, who I'll talk about now in a second, to Wolves themselves. Wolves can take over any of them teams, I do think so. So in 3rd place, as everyone could probably guess, I have Spurs, as does probably everyone else who doesn't support Spurs. The main reason everyone is saying this is because they are definitely a top 4 club. They're definitely one of the best in Europe at the minute, but they're nowhere near as good and as consistent as Liverpool and City. There's literally no other club besides the likes of Barcelona, Bayern, Real Madrid and Juventus that are actually as consistent and as good and have the depth in the squad as City and Liverpool do. If Tottenham lose Christian Eriksen, they could really struggle. He still has time to go to a club in Europe. Coming off the back of a Champions League final is brilliant to build upon, and I think Pochettino is the manager for them to progress to the highest level that they can actually get to. But I don't think they're going to win the Prem anytime soon. I think they're such a cup team that they could win an FA Cup soon, but I do not think they're going to win the league. So for my top 2, as much as I'm regretting saying this, I do think Liverpool will win the league this year. After coming off the back of winning the Champions League and their squad being as strong as ever before, I think they're going to be way more hungry than City this year to win that Premier League. City have won that league so many times now under Krept that I think it's just at the back of his mind at the minute that if they can cruise the league and probably will focus on the Champions League this year, that's probably a good priority to have if you're Pep. If you're City, I think you should obviously just go to win everything. I think every club should obviously just go to win everything. But as Pep Guardiola, he needs to win the Champions League again. He couldn't do it with Bayern Munich for whatever reason. He's got the squad in City to win that Champions League. They were very unlucky to lose to Tottenham in that Champions League semi-final. I do think City should have won that. I do think if City were in that Champions League final, they would have bet Liverpool. So I think this is City's year for the Champions League, but I do think Liverpool are more hungry after winning that Champions League and after being without the Premier League for so long. And with this squad that Liverpool have, I do think it's the best squad they've had in a hell of a long time. I personally think it's better than that 2005 Champions League winning squad, and I do think it's better than the squad who challenged for the Premier League title. I think it was in 2014. They let that slip, and I do think that this team is way more solid with Henderson, with Wijnaldum, with Virgil van Dijk. If Alisson stays fit, if he comes back strong, sooner rather than later after that injury, they could challenge for this Premier League title, and I think they will get it. Now, if Alisson stays out for a hell of a long time, and if Adrian doesn't step up and they lose because of Adrian's bad goalkeeping, that will be key. That injury could literally ruin Liverpool's season, and that could ruin my prediction. But at the minute, if I'm going with these teams, that Alisson is fit, that everyone's on form, Liverpool are winning the league. As much as I regret to say it, I'd love to say United will win the league. I hate seeing City and Liverpool doing so well, but it's just the fact of the matter is that they are better. So yeah, that's my prediction. Comment down below what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. Hope you enjoyed the FIFA 18 gameplay in the background. I don't have FIFA 19, so I couldn't have that gameplay in the background, couldn't have the updated teams. So you're going to have to deal with this. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.